I started getting these instant messages and making allegations against me from the same person that I had been talking about finding a horse for their daughter, granddaughter, whatever it was. Now the tone is more threatening and warning me that I'm going to be going to jail and da-da-da-da-da. And so I knew then, without a doubt, it was him. I mean, his handle was Texas Cop.
Suzie's story is a little different. She claims to have been stalked by a police constable.
I didn't know what a police constable was, so I had to look it up. It's actually a police officer of the lowest order.
Right. That sounds like some small town shit to me, Jake.
Oh, absolutely. And in a small town, if you're being stalked by the police, who do you turn to?
I'm Jaimie Beebe.
And I'm Jake Deptula. On today's episode of Strictly Stalking, we're chatting with Suzie Dickard, who was stalked by a police constable after she refused his advances.
After she divorced her husband, Suzie moved into a new town to start her life over.
Late one night, she was confronted at her home by an officer claiming to have a warrant for arrest.
Suzie demanded a letter of apology from the sheriff's office, and the police constable began to stake out her house and linger outside her places of business.
He made an advance towards her, and when she refused, he used his position to have her arrested and eventually turned the town against her. Suzie, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Suzie, what was life like for you growing up?
I was adopted. So growing up, people always say, well, when did you know? It's not that I never did not know, I was raised in a very structured Christian home. I've described it many, many times as like Beaver Cleaver, breakfast was ready every morning at a certain time. We all had our chores that we had to do. And the same goes with, when everybody came home from school and my parents from work, dinner was always at the same time. So it was a very structured lifestyle. Church was priority. Every time the doors were open, we were expected to be there, and our involvement in the church was very important to my family, and especially the outside appearances. Everything was the white picket fence. But, later in life, as I got older, it was an illusion of a white picket fence, So as I got older, my parents and I definitely were two bulls in a china cabinet.
What was life like before you met your stalker?
I had just finished a really nasty custody battle concerning my oldest son, and I had lost. My ex-husband was a very prominent surgeon in our hometown, and along with my parents, they disagreed with my lifestyle, which was living out in the country and things such as that. So by now I had my son, my youngest son. And so we kind of went for greener pastures. And so we moved to Waller County, and, it was, that first year was, I can honestly say, was the best year of our life. We had a really good time. I'd gotten involved in the community, and I had met a couple of people that had the Clark family. They had taken us under their wing, and it was truly a good time for us, considering all I had just gone through with my family and battling them alongside my ex-husband. And but it was that night, that I had finally found us a better place to live, and single mom, I never got any support, financially. And this was 2001. So Kyle was right at 3 at the time. And until I got the knock on the door that night from that deputy, wanting me to verify I was who I said I was with my identification, It was pretty good.
Walk us through exactly what happened. Like, you were at home and just there was a knock on the door. Was there anything leading up to this?
No, I mean, like I said, we had been there for right at a year. And every year they had like this little, it was a small town. And I just embrace small towns. I love small towns. And they had a little newspaper. And so like every week I had like 45 wrench, break-in, training, boarding, Anyway, so, my name, my phone number, this is where I live, So it was kind of baffling to me that so little of an investigation was done before the dam broke in my life. It was really baffling to me, And when he knocked on the door that night, at 11:30, I go to bed with the chickens. And I'm like, who the hell is this? So, I answered the door, t-shirt, underwear. I didn't give a shit. Anyway, he knocked on the door, hey, I'm here looking for blah, 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 blah. Are you such and such? And I'm like, no. Would you give me your driver's license? Sure. Walk out to my truck, hand him my license. And, I'm kind of looking over his paperwork while he's looking at my license. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not short and I don't weigh that much. And that's not my birthday. So I thought it was, pretty easy peasy, misunderstanding. See you later, alligator.
He showed up on the pretense that he was looking for someone else.
Actually, it was a deputy. I didn't meet the constable till the following day because the fingerprints, he was the fingerprint expert. And that's when they wanted me to come in the following day and give my fingerprints to prove I was who I said I was.
The following day, they showed up at a restaurant?
Yeah, I was just telling my friends that I had met for lunch that about what happened the night before. And I looked up and here comes a deputy and he's looking at me and he's like this. And I thought, you have got to be kidding me. Yeah, that's when they took me outside, put me in handcuffs and took me down to the station. And I had to get my girlfriend to come get my child. And 2 hours later, I was finally returned to my child when the fingerprints that they were comparing mine to, the girl was missing a finger. And I'm sure I made him look like the idiot that he ultimately was.
As the world's premier streaming service for horror, thriller, and supernatural content, Shudder is spooky 24/7, 365.
But they like to be a little extra for Halloween. And this year they're going all out by turning the normal 31 days of Halloween into 61 days of Halloween. A 2-month celebration of their favorite season, featuring weekly, original, and exclusive movie premieres.
Including H.P. Lovecraft's Color Out of Space starring Nicolas Cage, Glenn Danzig's Veronica, Scare Me starring Aya Cash, Josh Rubin, and Chris Redd, and 61 days of daily recommendations from Shudder creator Sam Zimmerman.
I love anything Glenn Danzig. I recently binged Creepshow, a Shudder original series, and it was amazing. I had my eyes glued to the TV, hiding under the covers of my bed the whole time.
Shudder has a unique collection of exclusive and original films and series, horror classics, and blockbuster hits. They even have an extensive international library that has really showed me some new, fun horror shows that I never would have found otherwise.
It's like the Netflix for horror, and now that I've tried it, I can't live without it. You can stream thriller, horror, and crime all the time for just $5.99 a month or $56.99 a year. It's unlimited access to stream ad-free on all your favorite devices.
You can stream the unexpected on your iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, Roku, and Android devices. You can catch me lying on the couch streaming the best of Shudder on my iPhone all the time.
Get started streaming the best horror, thriller, and supernatural content today.
To try Shudder free for 30 days, go to shudder.com and use promo code STALKING.
That's SHUDDER.com and use promo code STALKING to try Shudder free for 30 days.
So what happened next after you proved that you weren't the person they were looking for?
I think that's probably when I ruffled the feathers because to me, at the end of the day, you can have whatever you want behind your name. But at the end of the day, your character, who you are as an individual is your legacy, what you hope to teach your children. And so to me, that was very important to me that they validated that with an apology. Not only did they come to my home, but then they came and took me out of a public restaurant filled with people with my son that had to witness all this. And the girl, while they're sitting there looking at my fingerprints, I hear the deputy that brought me in over there on the phone. And he said, "Oh, she's incarcerated?" You know, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me here? I mean, the girl was in jail. So how did you even come to my house to begin with? I mean, they didn't even, I don't know if they didn't even. Are they that incompetent, or was there something already going on with the constable that at that point I didn't know about because I had never met him? And I had been there for a year, but he was, you know, I didn't know him.
At the time, what did you suspect was going on?
You know, I was pretty oblivious to it, to be honest, because, so, you know, I was fine with just a common mistake. I mean, we all make them. But, I mean, my insides are shaking right now thinking about this. I am so sorry. Sorry. I mean, it's 19 years later, and it's like, it's right now. It meant a lot to me for them to say, "I'm sorry." You know, I love this town. And, you know, it was pretty embarrassing, to say the least. So, I mean, at the least, I thought I could, you know, get an apology. I had no clue that it was going to create 19 years of him having the finger on the pulse of my life, you know.
What were some of the first steps that you started to feel that things were shifting? I
had become a part of this community, and what I had brought to this community meant a lot to me. So a girl down the road, I had a summer pro tour sponsor. And just before I left Waller County to go out on that summer tour, I had already caught him watching my house. And I already knew it was his car by now. And my girlfriend that had been in the town for a long time, I mean, she owned a record service. So she had worked with him, you know, or knew him for many, many 20-something years before I got there. And, you know, she had kind of filled me in on the rumors of who he was. And, you know, she warned me, you know, you needed to watch out. But, you know, I just shook it off with a grain of salt, you know, because I had no clue. I was very stupid. I had no clue. So when we left for the tour, a friend of mine that had got me the sponsorship, she threw a horse in the trailer because she wanted me to sell it while I was gone. And that's when the instant messages back then, 19 years ago, were kind of odd, because the verbiage and the dialogue is not what we would find normal. You know, if you were contacting me looking for a horse, you know, for your child or daughter or whatever. So I had a feeling something was brewing in my absence. I just didn't know the depths of what was going on and all the hands involved in it at the time, until they came and arrested me.
What did you know about the constable at this point?
Well, the rumor of the county was, you know, that he was really bad into controlling a lot of maybe the drug activity, the girls. This one girl that ultimately did come out after I came out. You know, he had been, I don't know what you would call it. She was 14. So let's say he was in his 30s at the time when this began with her, because she didn't have the guts enough to come forward until my story broke. And at that point, she had to have been in maybe her 30s. So he had been having sex with this young lady since she was 14 years old. And just a sick man. I mean, just had a GPS device on her car. And, you know, now knowing, you know, what I met and talked with her, now it makes sense how he would show up at everything that I would be at.
Walk us through how the stalking began.
It became with like I said, it began with the emails. And the dialogue just didn't kind of mesh up. But then I was gone. I was on the road now, and I started getting these instant messages and making allegations against me from the same person that I had been talking about finding a horse for their daughter, granddaughter, whatever it was. You know, now the tone is more threatening and warning me that I'm going to be going to jail and da-da-da-da-da. And so I knew then, without a doubt, it was him. I mean, his handle was Texas Cop. It was the night before I got arrested. He made it clear, I'm coming for you. And I knew he was. And he did.
Tell us about the arrest.
Oh, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. I just met this family, you know, so sweet. They had allowed us to plug in at their barn like a lot of horse people do. And I was going to stay there and help her, you know, work with their babies in exchange for, you know, letting us stay there. And actually, the girl that had put the horse in the trailer, I talked to her that morning and said, you know, I really like this guy. I think I'll buy it. How much you want? Well, I knew what she wanted, but he wasn't worth it. But anyway, we made a deal. I said, I'll wire you the money tomorrow. It was that. Then they got the call. Somebody's at the gate. They're looking for me. So I go to the gate. There's about 4 or 5 cop cars telling me that he's there, got a warrant for my arrest. Not the constable, you know, because I'm in another county in Texas. So not the constable. And I said, my son is up there. I said, can I at least go see my son and pack him a bag? And I had such guilt that day that it happened that day, because I knew something was coming down the pike. I could feel it in me. And I had remembered that morning that I had gotten so upset with him. He was just being a typical 2-year-old, 3-year-old, you know. So they let me go down there, and I asked them if I could make a call to make sure I could get him to somebody safe. And they did. And my horse shoer had been that day. So this horse that I had just bought that morning, I had just put shoes on him that day, and I'm now being arrested for livestock theft by the girl I had just talked to that morning. That was my friend. So I go in the horse trailer, and we were staying in the horse trailer. I go in the horse trailer and I pack him a bag, and I call my girlfriend back in Waller County, and the horse shearer said he'll come get Kyle and he'll relay him and she'll meet him. And I had about, they didn't even have to let me do this. They could have just thrown me in that car right there and said, you know, fuck the bad luck, you know, get in, you're arrested. I mean, I had 3 counts against me: livestock theft, forgery. The cops are nice enough. I go, I make the bag, I make the connections. And now I've got to tell my son that it just woke up from a nap. I'll be leaving for a minute, but I'll be back. I asked them to let me leave him inside the trailer so he wouldn't see. He wouldn't see me leaving and how I was leaving, because his uncle was a policeman. they're good people, right? That's all he knew. And he was gone. I didn't see him again for 72 days, even though they only kept me for 27.
What happened once they took you in?
They took me into Tarrant County. I was in Burleson, Texas, so I think it's Tarrant County. And I stayed there for a day or two maybe. And I'd never been in jail before. So I was like, I wasn't expecting not to have my clothes or not have my shoes or not have my privacy. But I stayed there, and then they sent somebody from Waller County to pick me up and brought me back to Waller County.
And now here's a clip of an exclusive bonus episode available only on patreon.com/strictlystalking.
I did not want to believe or face the possibility that this professor could be breaking that sacred contract between professor and student and potentially ruining my life and my career in the process. I really didn't want to believe it.
So what happened once you got there?
So I get to Waller County, and it's on the weekend. I do remember that. I've been in jail now probably 3 or 4 days. So Monday I should get a bond is what they say. And anxiously waiting. Monday comes and no bond. You're a flight risk. I'm now living in my second year in the same county by this point. And they wouldn't let me go. They refused to let me go. They refused to give me a bond. And for the next 4 weeks, every Monday, that was the same answer I got until a visiting judge came in that we fought for to get, because it was clear that this DA, that judge, that JP was going to do whatever he said to do. And at that point, I had no clue that he was the one moving all the checkers on the board. It was the 27 days in jail. I watched the towers fall. And all any of us wanted to do that day was be near our families and make sure everybody was okay. But by this point, I had already gotten served with papers. I no longer had any rights to my oldest son, that he was now going to be fighting to take everything away from me. I also get a notification while I'm in jail that the sperm donor that's never even spent 30 seconds with Kyle, and this is now 2001, is fighting for custody, going to take him from me because I'm in jail, which is the hands that this constable has placed him in by this point. And I would call home to my parents. I'd call collect, and they wouldn't accept the charges. It was the loneliest place in the world to be. Visiting judge comes in. Oh, God, he was my hero. I come in the orange suit, and I'm bound and I'm restricted. And I remember the judge asking the DA, why is she bound like this? And he said, well, Judge, she is charged with 3 felonies. And he scratches his head a little bit, and he says, now, wait a minute. We just had a man in here he was charged with murder or attempted murder, whatever it was. And he walked in here, not bound, not chained. This woman has no priors. Why is she being treated any differently? And right there, I knew he was my first sign of hope. That he was going to set me free that day. So he proceeds to ask the DA, why haven't I received a bond? And there was some little bullshit answer, you know, she's a flight risk. She was not even in town when they arrested her, or whatever the blah, blah, blah jargon is to prove that that I shouldn't have gotten a bond. He said, I want those chains off of her. Her bond is set at $2,500. And ma'am, you're free to go. That simple. 27 days later. And by now, my son had already been removed out of my girlfriend's front yard in Alabama. And I'm from Louisiana. So is the sperm donor. So how did he find him? The constable. And he was gone for the next 72 days.
How were you able to get your son back?
So you get out of jail, and first thing you want to do is go to Louisiana to take your child back. But when I got there, he didn't even have my son. He hadn't even had my son. Maybe a day or two. The thrill was over. He had pawned him off to his sister. And it didn't take me long to find out who she was and where she lived. And let my presence be known. This was not going to happen to my second child like it did to my first. So it took 72 days, and I had to sit and wait and pray, and I never slept in my bed while he was gone. I always stayed on the couch in the middle of the house because the constable was still lurking outside my doors. My son was in Louisiana, and I was back in Texas fighting to bring him home. So ultimately, they came to the Louisiana judge, threw it back to Texas because said Louisiana had no right to him because we had lived in Texas for so long at that point. But standing in that Louisiana courtroom that day was my mother and father, my ex-husband that had absolutely zero to do with my son, the sperm donor, the constable. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a line I think you don't cross. You want to put me in jail, stay in your lane. But why are you showing up in my family matters?
Once you were able to get your son back, what happened next?
The judge said that he had to return my child by a certain time at a certain place. I left with my son, and we got out of Louisiana as quick as we could.
Were you in fear for your life at this point from the constable?
By this point, my blinders were off.
What were your next steps to fight back against the constable?
Well, by now I had contacted the FBI. I had contacted the Texas Rangers, and the DA controls, you know, who they allow to come in or whatever. So she kept all of them at bay. The emails were definitely, we weren't hiding anymore in his emails, you know, and he made it perfectly clear in those emails that he was watching me at night. It says that on that news coverage. I mean, he made no bones about it. And so that's when I chose to leave. So we went to, ironically, Smith County, where I'm at right now. And I found a little place, and I got a little job at the hospital.
Suzie, what did the emails say that he sent you?
I would go to the sheriff after I got out, and I was telling him about these emails and, you know, all him coming by my car, coming by my house. And I told him what was going on. I told him I truly believe this is him. I told him all of my suspicions up until the point that I was arrested and after. And he said, you know, that He was going to look into it. I get an email back telling me that I am an elected official. You can't touch me. Why don't you try the FBI, the CIA, or whatever else he wrote in those emails? You know, so there was my trust from the sheriff right there. I mean, he had just turned around and told me that conversation that we had just shared. So, you know, and it was very, like I said, it was very clear that he was watching us. He made it, there was no bones about it. Why? He had run this county for however many years before my story came, and they just turned their head. They were scared of him. They were terrified of him.
Suzie, when did you decide to tell your story?
I went to the press pretty much immediately. Especially when the emails when I knew it was him. You know, did I have an affidavit? I mean, did I have a warrant that revealed him? No, but I knew it was him. So nobody would touch it. Nobody, even in Houston. I went to some of the biggest news stations and nobody wanted to touch it. They thought that, oh, I was just crazy because I had been arrested. You know, she's just, you know what I'm saying? Y'all hear it every day with all the other people that come on your show. Nobody believes us, you know, and we're trapped. We are trapped in our own stalker prison. That's why I just love that I connected with you guys. So this is the first time that I can have a true conversation, and I'm surrounded by people that have shared some of my same emotions through their own personal journeys. That's very, that allows me to kind of release, if you know what I mean.
Did you feel more validated once the news stories started covering what was going on?
Oh, heck yeah. Oh, heck yeah. You know, I'd already moved at this point. I'd come to Smith County, and like I said, I'd gotten a little job, and I was working at the hospital. I don't think I was here a month. I don't even know if I'd been here a couple of weeks. And their constable shows up at my house in Smith County, where I just moved, and he was letting me know that he had already received a phone call from my constable in Waller County that he had a criminal living in his county, and this is where she lived. Da 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 da. And I'm thinking, what the fuck? Are you meaning to tell me this is going to start all over again? The next week I was fired from my job. He sent me an email about that one too. He told me that he thought he needed to let my employers know that they had hired a criminal with 3 pending felonies.
How did that make you feel?
Oh, worthless. I mean, worthless. You know, it's now a 4-year-old, and how am I going to feed him? How am I going to pay all these people that have fought for me? Overwhelmed, scared, embarrassed, humiliated, isolated, alone. I felt my life meant nothing to anybody, and all they wanted was what I had.
What were the results of the court case?
A new DA came in. He gave me my freedom. So that was a good day. And I mean, he identified all the laws that were not followed by the constable, and he made sure I was free. That was a good day. And that was, by now the other girl had come forward because she had already seen the first story when it first aired a year earlier. So this is now a year later. So none of this happened quickly. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, I moved to Smith County, the Rangers came in, the FBI came in, they took my computer, you know, no problem, take whatever you want. I got nothing to hide. You know, they made the charges, they made the allegations, but none of this happened quickly.
Can you walk us through what the constable was charged with?
Oh, what he was charged with? I think it tampering with the witness, official oppression, stalking.
How did it come about that the constable was charged with stalking you?
Because of Smith County. Completely because of Smith County, of my move to Smith County. And once I reported, I mean, it was a 50-50 shot if they were going to help me or not. So, at this point, what do I have to lose? You know, zero. So I went and actually, someone had recommended for me to talk to a lieutenant, and he was the one that brought them all in, and it was over. I mean, it wasn't over, but it was the beginning to the end of the constable at that point.
Did you think that he would be found guilty of stalking you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I was saying a minute ago, by this point, my initial story had aired a year prior. So now the girl, the 14-year-old, I think she was around 14. Anyway, she was young. By now, you know, she's now an adult. So she's now come forward. And then a deputy that had worked along beside of me come forward. So we had more, you know, we had more rocks in our bucket now. It wasn't just me telling the story anymore, the criminal.
After you found out that he was found guilty, what was your reaction?
Personally, I still think that the good old boys still intervened a little bit. And I mean that by, did he go to jail? No. Did he lose his job? Yes.
When was the last time that you heard from the constable?
Till the day he died, May of this year. Heck no, that man knows where I live. He knows where I've been. Now, I would see him from a distance when I'd come into town to do these stories. You know, amazingly, he would always like pass by or...
What do you want listeners to know about your experience?
You know, it's crazy that I'm so emotional about this, as if I'm sitting in a time capsule right now. You know, I thought I was really, really strong. But clearly, I mean, this is the reality of what happens to us, and we all handle it differently. Every one of us that have lived a life peering out of our curtains or keeping the lights off, or every time something happens, or surround yourself with guard dogs now. For me now, that to know that you're not alone, you're not crazy. And now the laws, they're not great, but they need to be better. That's what I want the listeners to know. Together we can all make a change. You know, I think these people that do this to people, I think they should be held accountable for. You know, whether that be through a civil litigation, or, you know, if we finally get that one person that actually understands what stalking laws are and has the power to prosecute, actually does it. Because, I mean, believe me, all these years I've gone through every law enforcement imaginable trying to get something done. And they won't do a thing.
What advice do you have for someone who's being stalked?
Our first instinct is to go to the law to protect us. But they don't. So find somebody to talk to. Try to talk to someone, you know, like I do. I'm still in contact with my legislatures and the people that write the laws in Louisiana. I mean, I talk to my representative all the time and keep him educated on what this is and what happens to us. But I still don't see a lot of things being done about it. The damage within us is all the same. You know, so I hope that when there's change, that my voice was one of those that helped make it. That's what I hope for.
What's life like for you now?
You know, when you walk in the house and you're fiddling for the light, you're trying to find a light to turn the light on because the room's so dark. You know that feeling? That's my life. I wake up every morning. I start my coffee, I feed my horses, I come back in, I get back in my bed, and I don't step outside of my house again. I have 2 very nice barrel horses just outside my door. One of them I've had since May. And I've yet to throw a leg over him. Because what you see in this little screen is my world. My children no longer talk to me. I haven't spoke to my mother in over 4 years. I've lost more jobs than I've been able to get because of the charges against me. I'm 55 and I should be enjoying a retirement. But instead, the only job that I can get is cleaning someone else's toilet.
Suzie, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank y'all for having me.
If anyone out there is in need of help or is a victim of stalking, please reach out. You can find a list of resources on our Instagram at Strictly Stalking Pod.
You can watch our episodes at youtube.com/Strictly Stalking Pod.
And now we're on Patreon, where you can sign up for exclusive bonus episodes, live chat sessions, and check out merchandise. Just go to patreon.com/Strictly Stalking.
I'm Jake Deptula.
And I'm Jaimie Beebe. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Strictly Stalking.